All right, good evening and welcome to the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, June 20th, 2017. The time is 8:25 p.m. And we will take a roll call when you are ready, Miss Ann.
Hendricks.
Here.
Kinney.
Here.
Malat.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Rule.
Here.
Thomas excused. Traxler.
Here.
All right. This meeting has been noticed and approved according to state statutes. Now we can discuss the agenda if there's any points to discuss. Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve as presented.
So moved. Second.
All right. And that is a voice vote, correct? All those in favor of passing the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none. Agenda is approved. Anyone signed up for public comments? No one at this time, per usual. And so we will jump right into item number 5, department reports, written only. Those have been submitted. So that is all we need to do there, correct? Just acknowledge that. All right, and now number 6, the Streetlight Committee report, Maple Avenue streetlights. Is there anything we need to do with that?
Yeah, I was asked by the committee members who left tonight to go over this. There was interest in looking at Maple Avenue as in increasing the amount of light at night, and the committee got together because the increased traffic due to the access to the Commerce Center, the new countryside. You know, more development there means more traffic. So the committee reviewed this and are recommending that 4 streetlights be added to that stretch. I believe Eric included a map indicating where they would put those. Looks like 7 streetlights.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 4 luminaires and then 3 of them had poles with luminaires.
Yep. So included is an estimate from Columbus Water and Light on the cost. And so the committee, the Streetlight Committee, is looking for the council's reaction to that.
I have a couple questions. And this maybe we don't have the answer to, but is that street slated at any time or potentially slated to be redone?
It's.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, is Jason answering?
He's kind of shaking his head.
Okay.
Did Jason come to the...
I would say it's been rated. I don't know if it's been scheduled.
Right.
It has not been part of any previous discussions for reconstruction. There obviously are some concerns, I think, with increased traffic and the width and the shoulders there, but it hasn't really been a project that's really rose to the top. I think primarily there, lack of utilities under it. I know we were focusing on replacing streets, but that could be one of these mill and overlay projects we've talked about that might be a candidate at some point in the future. But again, that's the pleasure of the council if you're so inclined to look at that as a alternative for.
If that was something we wanted to do in the near future, would it impact the placement or functioning of the streetlights?
I think unless if you're considering a full reconstruct of that section, which I certainly wouldn't recommend, I would recommend more of a surface replacement just because there's really nothing out there right now for development or a need for that to be an urban section, in my opinion. The answer would be at this point, I wouldn't see any impact to what's being proposed on the streetlight addition.
Okay, thank you.
Trina?
Just a super quick question. Wondering if there are plan lights right over 151 and to the east to help with those that are turning. I just don't see anything listed here.
I don't know what the plans are. Eric could answer that a little bit better. Exactly what were you were referencing?
So
Going
past the underpass, and then you go, there's the business on the right, and then there's the road.
Okay,
Transit
so
road,
going
I
into
think.
transit.
Yeah, is there, I don't even know, that's what I was gonna ask, is there a light already there? Cause
I see that.
I feel like if we're
Okay.
going out, 7 lights this
Okay.
way.
I believe there is because of the businesses that are there. Mhm.
Yeah, I think 2, but I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I can't,
Like, if we're gonna light up the area, I would just like to make sure we finish to the intersection. That would be my only comment.
I guess we could ask for
Thank you, that's kind of what I was
clarification on that, but,
getting towards.
At the risk of assuming, I guess I would think that they probably thought that far out and know it's there,
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
definitely worth asking
Yeah.
for sure.
yeah.
Rod,
Just an off-the-cuff remark here, since I'm on the Water and Light Commission, we have our meetings out there, and a lot of times in the winter, we get done with meetings, and it is pitch dark out there. That is the dark sky area of Columbus. I don't think there's any darker spot in our city.
good for stargazing, you're saying?
Perfect.
All right.
For now, anyway.
For now.
Yeah, right. We just destroyed it. And Matt,
I guess the questions I have, it looks like it's a recommendation because of the increase in traffic. Is there any actually metric of which we've verified this, or is this kind of just a feeling? And if that's just kind of a observational thought process on this, I'm wondering if part of this is because of the current road construction and we might be tackling a point that would be moot after the end of the year. The fact that it's a rural section, there's a lot of rural sections that are heavily traveled that don't have lights on them. And looking at Countryside, Ford, and Shopco and Century, business hours are 5 o'clock for Ford for certain days, 8 and 9 and 10 kind of clock for most rest of the businesses. So it's not like we're lighting this up at 2 a.m. for people patroning businesses. It would be minimal traffic probably at that point. So I'm kind of wondering if this might be, albeit $100 a year or whatever it is, or monthly, increase in overall monthly street lighting bill of approximately $100 a month. So looking at $1,200 a year, I think to light up a road, that might be a bit overkill, unless we have a for sure increase in traffic and a noticeable increase in safety concerns from some other metric.
I don't have any hardcore traffic data, but just living in the area, anecdotally, you can notice a palpable increase in traffic. Again, it doesn't give you any hard number, Matt. I understand that, but also just with developments that are already taking place, heading that direction and stuff that has potential for development between Dick Street and 151. I kind of think it's timing's good on this, in my opinion. Andy?
Actually, you said both things I was going to say. That field, there's those fields that are across the street that were, we had a thing in the plan commission where it came through where they're looking to replat it, and Paul knows all about that, but I don't think that's really gone anywhere. But there is potential across the street there for single-family homes, I believe, and that would definitely be a important piece. And I also actually drive that way all the time now, even before the construction.
Would it make sense, though, to address the issue during the time of installation of said businesses or residences or platting of that cornfield, as opposed to now and paying
I
street
don't.
light pole?
It could. I guess I consider the winter months to be very long and dark. And so I kind of see anything from that 4 p.m. period till, those businesses close at 9 at 10 o'clock at night. Those lights being a significant safety benefit for, 8 to 10 hours a day for 6 months out of the year. With or without.
I agree.
Just playing a little bit
being
of
slated.
devil's advocate on the
Oh, for
topic,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, we
I
can do
agree
point
with Ryan,
counterpoint.
so.
I'm on James Street basically, so I just go that way. I don't rest you guys on the side streets. I don't know what you know.
Right.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Anything further? Yes, Patrick?
Yeah, I just, in thinking about this, it seems like the critical timing is probably to get them in before winter, I would think. That being said, you talk about traffic counts and whatnot. Are I mean, there probably still could be some time to do some of that. The thing is, I don't know if there's any existing traffic counts for the condition beforehand, so to have it anything to compare it to. I'm just throwing that out as, if there's a short stretch where we throw a counter out there or do something to see what kind of traffic we are seeing in terms of numbers, real numbers, but.
What's the kind of cost on something like that? It's pretty minimal, I assume, or?
Yeah, DPW, I think, can obtain a counter, just through the county. County has one.
Okay.
So I don't think it's that it would have that great of an impact. We'd rent it for a week or two or something. And
Well, if you don't have any data to back it up
That-
against, what's the point?
that's the thing, yeah.
I mean, or if you're putting on an added counter, you're kind of catching everybody where somebody sits there on a Tuesday night from 5 to 10 and counts cars. Have a typical June something day, you have 5 hours, you show that there's 4 cars driving down that road, or we have 40, and then it's, I think, a moot point, I guess. If there's no metric to compare against, data's data for data's sake, but no real information
I
for
would
it.
suggest we'd probably have 40 student trucker drivers in a single day. Given my
There's a lot of wheels
experience.
on those.
Maybe we should definitely put lights in if that's the case.
And to that effect, I was just thinking with that data, there's shoot, I forgot what I was gonna say. I was trying to make a joke about the 18-wheelers and I forgot. It'll come back to me. It always does.
Trina?
I just really like the idea for adding the lights and seem like a relatively or comparatively inexpensive way to encourage some residential growth on that end of town, to just get a little bit ahead of the area and make it more welcoming.
I remembered.
Okay.
Oh, I was just gonna
Feel
say to the point about the data. Also, with what you said, is it artificial data now because of James Street? So what we're collecting may not be good either way. So,
True.
told you it'd come back to me.
Yes, Jason?
So I think Jason was on the edge of his seat in anticipation.
No, just 2 pieces of information. One is there is a streetlight at the intersection of Transit and Maple currently existing. So to answer the question earlier, the other point is we do have a traffic impact analysis study that was done several years ago in conjunction with the development out by Shopco and, which spans all the way over to Transit Road. I don't know emphatically, but I'm sure if we pulled that traffic impact study, we could probably, I'm sure they have traffic numbers out there. It's a few years old, but I don't think that traffic pattern has generally changed a whole lot, based off of what business developments they were saying. I know that the state does have some counts on some of the roads in town. I would believe because that was previously a state highway, there may be counts on that. So historically, we could do that, plus Patrick's right, I know the county does provide a counter at low cost if you're just looking for number of vehicles or counts as far as traffic volume. And so I think if you're just looking for data, I think we could scrape together some data for your consideration in a future discussion. So,
How does everybody wish to proceed? Would you guys like to bring this forward to the next meeting, or would you like to make a request for some data collection to bring this back to the next meeting and report on it then, or however long staff might need to collect that information? Andy?
I think we should just move it forward. Even with his comments about the traffic data that could be out there, if there even is a potential cost, a low cost, I see it. I know that there's increased traffic out there, and as well as there, it could be artificial because of the extra, people skipping James Street. And it's going to only increase when James Street's closed. So I don't see a point.
Okay.
Just to make sure if we put up a light and somebody's going, why are we putting lights out in the middle of a cornfield? We have a good reason as to why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Data's never bad, for sure. So it seems like some folks are comfortable moving it forward. without a request for additional information. Is everyone comfortable with that? All right, looks like we have consensus. We will move this forward to the July 6th meeting. Thank you. Can I interrupt you for one quick second? I just want to ask Patrick a question. Sorry about that. No worries. All right, so now we are on to item number 7, the consideration of annual renewals for various insurance policies. And our insurance representative, Mr. Putka, is here. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me here tonight. You've all gotten the packets, I assume, had a chance to go through them. As soon as we got the quotes in, quickly turned them around and got them down to the clerk so she could put them together. There's 4 separate packets. I don't intend to do anything with second, third, and fourth, the property, the inland marine, and the auto unless you have specific questions about them. I'll just focus on the review, and if you've got specific questions when we're on the pages dealing with those items, we can answer those items at that time. The City of Columbus is the insured here. The renewal happens July 10th, 2017, goes on to July 10th, 2018 is an annual renewal. We've been with EMC for about 15 years. EMC is one of the larger writers in Wisconsin for small municipalities and school districts. They write a lot of business in Wisconsin. They write in about 30-some states other than Wisconsin. EMC's got the forms and such out there, the endorsements to cover municipals, take on some of the things that municipals offer and some of the things they're subject to. So getting past, EMC is an A-rated carrier by AM Best and is a very financially strong company. So under the property insurance, we have the buildings, personal property, and property in the open. Now I did make adjustments on the 2016 buildings up to 38 million. I upped it 1.5 million because we added replacement cost coverage for a building bought by the library and $1 million for a building bought by the city for the future fire department, the Countryside 4 building. So I did bump the 2016 number up by 1.5. EMC has done some adjustments to the building cost or building replacement cost other than that. So they're up to 40,501,000. This is on a blanket basis. Personal property, they've picked this number as well. They usually take the building values and building occupancy and give a portion of that coverage to personal property. Property in the open, you can see it went from 6.8 to 8.5. There were a few pieces of property in the open, primarily a transfer station that was understated. They've caught that thing up to value again. A year ago, we went through this renewal. They were out working on, this has been 4.5 years they've been writing the property. We started December about 4.5 years ago. We went a partial term, December to July, and then we started picking it up on an annual basis. Year by year, EMC would come in and get some parts of the city done. Last year, they came through the waterworks department and the sewer treatment department. We did some revisions there. Last year, they actually thought that I had, on location 21, $100,000 for your Tower Drive water tower, which was actually 700-some thousand in the property in the open. They rescheduled location number 21 as Tower Drive. It's up to 790,000 now, but they left off the old water tower that got hit by lightning. So we caught that on the renewal, got it put back on. It would have been covered anyway because they took it off and weren't supposed to. But we had $100,000. Here's what I'm getting to with this being on a blanket basis. We had $100,000 in that water tower. It cost $177 just to repair what we repaired. So with that, after they got through the evaluation and such, on the renewal, they offered the water tower at $100,000 actual cash value. It's no longer in the blanket. Now I'll talk to Patrick and we'll probably talk to Carolyn. If you wanted to change that back to get replacement cost in that water tower, they would want it insured for replacement cost, even though it's part of the blanket. And if you insured it for replacement cost, if you took the number on the bottom, 8.75 cents times $1 million, it would cost you about $875. Now it's costing you $87.50. So that would be the difference. It would cost you about an extra $900 to insure it. And I'm just guessing $1 million. I don't know what it would cost to rebuild that water tower. If you remember the loss, it's 7 down to 6 layers, down to 5 layers with a big steel tank sitting on top. So, okay. We have replacement cost on buildings and contents. When I talked to the adjuster about this building, and I talked to the adjuster just before an 8:30 meeting on a Monday morning when some of the department people were meeting on this, he says on a blanket basis, his words were, you've got $100,000 on the building, you got a $52 million blanket. If it costs us $5 million to repair the building, we're on it for $5 million. You understand that? And I said, yes, that's what I assumed it meant. So with that, any of the buildings in the city of Columbus, we're going to have enough coverage to replace them. The other part about the EMC municipal endorsements is they include ordinance. What the building inspector is going to order you to do if you have a substantial loss to a building to make it compliant to today's codes. So for example, this building is covered for 3.4. It means that if this building was lost, replacement cost is like, kind, and quality. But if we have to sprinkler this building, there's no sprinkler heads in here now. We would have to sprinkler the entire building, probably because of the volume of cubic feet under roof. This building would likely, in a commercial occupancy, open to the public, it would probably have to be sprinklered. The endorsements are going to give us that coverage, the sprinklers. So it's going to bring the building up to code current conditions. 90% co-insurance, deductible is $2,500. They did offer me a renewal at $1,000 deductible, but with the $2,500 deductible, it was $6,000 higher. Over the 4.5 years, you've had like 4 property losses. I felt like we're better off saving the $6,000, taking the $2,500. Last year, you wound up with 2 property losses. You're still money ahead after 2 because the difference on 2 losses is $3,000. You're paying $1,000, paying $1,500 surcharge per loss. So with 2 losses, you're still money ahead last year if it would have been a $6,000 differential. So that's why I think we should stick with a $2,500 deductible. There is demolition built into the city ordinances. Demolition's what it costs to take the building down before you can rebuild it. In the water tower situation, we had $50,000, but the bid to take it down was going to be near $100,000. So you just spent $50,000 out of pocket to take it down. This way, and they had paid you $100,000 though for the building. So there was that. Loss to the undamaged portion of the building is covered. Increased cost of construction, that's the ordinance factor. That's what the building inspector is going to tell you have to do to bring the building up to code. We don't cover flood. I'm going to ask the question this year. It's something that Ann and I talked about when we went through the review. Earthquake can be tacked on. It's typically 5% of the property premium. So in this situation, the property premium being near $50,000, that would be $2,500 if my math and decimal points are right. You could clip on an earthquake endorsement. I have had a few buildings in the area that did clip on the earthquake endorsement just in case. Earthquake endorsement runs a little differently. Your deductible is not a flat deductible. It's a percentage of the loss, but typically it's 5% of the building premium. So we'll probably talk about that. We won't do anything unless we decide to do something, okay? Water damage, I always mark no on water damage because if I mark yes, anytime you have water damage, you're going to come and say you got a claim. If it's maintenance, we're not going to cover it. So if some building, if I can see you've got wet spots and brown, dry rings, I know the building's been getting wet time and time again. If a tree branch comes through and water comes in, if a fire happens and use water to put the fire out, or if we have a frozen pipe or something like that, that's the kind of water damage we will clean up. Did anybody have any questions, thoughts, any of the buildings about the property coverage? Okay. Included in the property coverage is equipment breakdown. The old term is called boiler and machinery. Equipment breakdown, and I just bring this up in case you happen to have a substantial loss. With a $2,500 deductible, if you had a loss that is sudden and accidental, not wear and tear on some of your systems, and it could be some of your large lift stations, things of this nature, it's just a reminder to the department heads that, wait a minute, Dennis talked about this. Hello, Dennis. Because equipment breakdown will pay for equipment if it's sudden and accidental. A lot of times arcing comes up in that coverage. That is built into the property premium. The next page I have, should go back and point out, the premium for the property insurance went from 39 to 49, just about 50. That's the bad news on this thing. Every other page gets much less painful than that. So, okay, general liability. You've got, on the 4th line down, each occurrence, you've got $1 million. On all lines that you write with liability, you've got a $3 million umbrella backing that up. The rating basis for your $1 million of liability are all these things below. Population, they don't use expenditures at EMC, they use population count. Population is up from 519 to 566. The other things are just here and there. There's a little bit, your water light company payrolls were up a little bit, but your water company payrolls came down a little bit. And it comes down to it, if you look at the bottom line, 2017 renewal premiums, $21,006. The expiring premiums, $22,837. It got better, it's just rates came down a little bit on general liability, even though some of your things like population were up. Automobile. Here again, we've got $1 million worth of liability in the auto backed up by a $3 million umbrella. I'm sorry, one thing I should go back to on general liability. State statutes in Wisconsin are still upheld. Bodily injury claims for $50,000 are still the max you can go after. And that's a Wisconsin state statute. We have not seen those limits exceeded yet. So you do have that. A municipal organization or a school district still has that out there, and it's still upheld. Automobile, we've got $1 million. There, the state statute is $250,000. So there's where the $4 million that you would have with the umbrella, you might at some point in time, because liability limits are going up, but you're still subject to the $250 deductible. Could be number of people hurt in an accident that you might have been at fault in. It would not hurt to look at another level of coverage on the umbrella, and I'm guessing that right now it's about $15,000. It'd probably be another $4,000 to do something like that, but that's something we can look at in the future. We do have $100 deductibles on comp, $500 deductibles collision on physical damage for your fleet. We tried going higher on the deductibles. We weren't getting enough savings to make it worthwhile. They just weren't paying the benefit back, so we just left things as they were. Did you want something to that? Okay. Okay. And so if you look at the bottom here, we've got the renewal premium for the auto policy at $49,413. The expiring is $46,734. The difference in the auto policy is there was two vehicles sold. Both were around 2,000 vehicles. Both averaged around $500 for a premium. There were 4 vehicles added, and I think two of them were squads. They went on at about $1,150 a piece. That's in my summary page at the back. So the net value of change on the auto policy is roughly $500 because of the value of the 4 vehicles going on. We do have police professional and public officials. These are our claims made part of the policy rather than an occurrence-based part of the policy. There's $1 million on each claim for each of these lines. The $3 million umbrella does follow because it's underwritten by EMC. So you do have a total of $4 million for police professional. There's a $1,000 deductible that applies there. You do have a $4 million total limit on your public official, which is your board of directors and your employment practices liability. And with that, there's a $2,500 deductible per claim in that situation. The premiums are down on the bottom, $64.34 and 17, $63.82 and 06. That went up about $50. Crime policy. Now here's one I'm going to ask you to write a couple things in because I did get the quote kind of late because we had to do every 3 years we have to do a new dam summary app, and with that things came in kind of late and I had to get them to the clerk so she could get them to you. So right above data compromise, if you would write 1222, $1,222 in 2016, $1,014 in 2017. We have on the property policy with the EMC $100,000 worth of money and securities on and off premises, the money lost, with a $250 deductible. That's covered under the property policy. And then we write a public dishonesty policy of $200,000 with a $2,500 deductible. Forgery and alteration, $200,000 with a $0 deductible. Those parts of the policy in 2016 cost $1,222. 2017, they're down to $1,014. So that came down. We did add a few years back $50,000 of data compromise. If somebody hacks into your system and finds things, now most of the things, I can look up anybody's tax records here, find things like that, property tax values. That's not data compromise. Somebody getting in, it could be employees' data and things like that. There is $50,000 worth for response expense coverage, defense and liability coverage, and 25 for identity recovery. In 2000, and if you would scratch crime there and write data on that one, that's one that got missed. In 2016, that was $574. That went down to $404. Workers' compensation. Okay. EMC writes all lines on this. There are some competitors out there that would offer to write insurance for the city of Columbus. They would put these things in different places. Most would use the assigned risk pool for municipal business. EMC has got a good loss control services. Plus, the city is buying their own loss control services. I know Anton's involved in that. The department heads have gotten the employees, they're buying into this thing. The city of Columbus is doing wonderful in work comp. If you look down to the bottom here, the third line from the bottom where it says experience modification, the last 2 years, you're getting a 26% credit on your workers' compensation because you haven't had a lot of, there have been some minor claims, we just haven't had significant claims. That's about as low as you're going to get for the size premium you're running at. Your premium would have started out this year at $77,800, but because you're running a 0.74 experience mod, you're down to $54,279. So that takes a big chunk off of that. With that, also what happens with your experience modification and doing a wonderful job, you get a dividend back from EMC. I can't advertise that as part of the premium and reduce it from the premium, but I can tell you historically, EMC has not missed paying dividends for over 50 years. Last year, I think they paid you a dividend about $8,500. So if you add 85 onto your the 22,000 you're saving roughly on the other part, that's near 30,000. Now I know Kim called me a couple of months ago and we had a conversation about money spent for safety meetings, safety personnel. And one thing is you're keeping your people here, you're keeping them safe. That's the most important thing. But the sideline to that is you're saving $30,000 a year doing it. So I don't know what you're spending on it, but yeah, it's money well spent. The numbers up on top, the Work Comp Rating Bureau runs the workers' compensation rates. It's that line of business statewide. So every municipality is paying the same rates. The estimated payrolls, they'll change year to year based on what you guys are actually doing, how much work you're doing. What you can control is your safety procedures and your department heads, and city personnel are doing a great job. You are going to suffer, I'll tell you ahead of time, next year. We did have one claim on this current term that did have a larger situation going on with it. Can't say much about it because it's HIPAA related stuff. But that will adversely affect us next year, and it will stay on your experience mod for 3 years. But it doesn't happen very frequently, and overall, like I said, since I've been here, or last 10 years or so, the city's been doing a great job, especially with workers' compensation, because that's kind of a touchy area. You do have a 17% flat dividend offer again by EMC. Okay, anybody, any comments, questions about work comp? Commercial umbrella, we do offer the $3 million umbrella. Because EMC writes all the underlying coverages and then they write the umbrella, all the coverages are going to match. There's no retention between the underlying insurance and the commercial umbrella. If you miss something, if the umbrella happens to be broader than the underlying, some companies will charge a deductible $10,000 or so. But because EMC is writing everything will match. 2017, the umbrella premium is $14,841. 2016, it was $14,269. The only difference we got there primarily is that there's a couple more people in the city. We had probably 5,019, which is a rating factor, to 5,066. Plus, there's 2 more autos on the auto policy. We get to the back page. Again, the bad number is on top. It's the property premium. Overall, EMC's situation with property, they've been aggressively writing property for the last 5 or so years. The local government property insurance fund used to have an office down in Madison. They used to write property insurance for a lot of municipals, a lot of school districts, but they were undervalued and they weren't out doing the loss control or evaluation work. And what happened is, as claims were happening, they were undervalued, but they were trying to make up for it by paying the claims out, wound up shorting their reserves. They wound up going defunct a few years ago or being taken out of action by the governor. So with that, commercial insurance is on it now. They've been on it. I've been in another village for over 5 years. It takes about 3 or 4 years for us to get caught up. We're to the point now where I think we're pretty well caught up. They've been grabbing different levels of your city, checking out your water and your sewer last year, your electrical stuff, Eric's line of business this year, some of the electrical transmission lines, things like that. So I think they're pretty well caught up with that. But if you look at that $10,000 increase in premium there, and we look at about a $3 million increase in coverage on property, about 2/3 of that increase is rate, but a third of it is property. It's a rating increase, so it's not the whole thing. And everybody is, I rate some school districts and other municipalities, everybody is seeing rate increases because EMC knows after watching the local government property insurance fund that they don't stay up with rates. It continually costs more and more money to build buildings, and you need your buildings to value. I've never had a person with a substantial loss to a building tell me I've got too much money on the building. So you've got to have enough money out there to cover what you're doing. Looking down the rest of the lines, inland marine, the inland marine went up a little bit. We had one change on inland marine in the last year. We took off a Polaris for the fire department, or an ATV of some sort for the fire department. It was insured for about 10 grand. We put on a new unit for 23. It's the only change that happened inland marine wise. That's mobile contractors' property going around through the city. General liability, down a little bit. Auto is up a little bit. We explained that there was probably a $500 rate, but most of that is the fact that there's 4 on, 2 off, and the 4 on. 2 of those 4 on especially were higher priced units. Crime is down. Boiler is included. The umbrella's up a bit. Law enforcement's up a bit. Data compromise went down. So overall, we see that we're at 132,506 before work comp to 145,800. We wound up with a $4,000 reduction again on work comp. So overall, we're up about 8,000. The back page, we do have some additional insureds. We do have additional insured status on both the auto and general liability for the Columbus Rural Fire Group and American Transmission on the general liability. Work comp, we went through that. The dividend stayed at 0.74. 17% flat dividend. Last year, they gave you back $8,500. And here, the auto's off and the auto's on. Anybody have any questions about any of the lines or anything we've done?
I have a couple of questions. Just going back to the property insurance, I know we went through that first. But one, I noticed the rate itself went up, regardless of the different value of the property. I understand that part. Based on claims made, or what's your estimation for the rate increase?
The last 2 years, EMC collected $372,000 in premium from the city of Columbus. They paid out $517,000. The only line, and if you take out those 2 big claims, one being the straight line winds, that was $275, and the other being the water tower is about $175. It's $450,000. Other than that, we probably wouldn't have seen it. We'd have seen some increase. There'd have been probably at least a 5% increase without that. But yeah, part of it's due, the property line did not perform well. So
Sure.
the other lines, but then ask me the question, how were you guys before that? The last 5 years before that, you guys were awesome. There's 5 years in a row you were giving money to EMC. So you've been great. And they were storm related. These 2 losses were storm related. So.
Right. I just wanted to clarify, actually just pointed out to council. The other thing I would point out is, if I heard you correctly, we are currently covering the Chapel Street water tower as actual value, not replacement value.
Actual cash value is what they wanted to do because of the value. I had it on the policy last year at $100,000,
Right.
and it cost $177 just to repair one side.
So did you when you were talking about that, did I hear you say that it would cost an extra $800 to get actual?
That's
or
just a
replacement
wag
value?
at it.
Okay.
Because I'm guessing after we know how the tower is built, that it's probably, if you had to replace that water tower brick by brick, it would be at least $1 million probably to replace it, because there's a
Right.
lot of masonry in that thing. Those guys were up there, I think 7 layers on the bottom, reduced to 6 layers, then went down to 5 layers up to the tank. Just to get a crane in to pick that tank up and just to change the tank or put the tank in, it'd probably be just a setup for the crane. It'd probably be 25,000 alone just for setting a crane to get that thing up there.
Sure. I think what I'm ultimately driving at is covering it at actual cash value, or having this demolition coverage be 50 grand. We might want to either consider having the discussion about the value we want to cover the water tower at, or a broader discussion about demolition costs, because we all know how much it would have cost to take it down, and that was an option. And I think it was cost prohibitive, and that's why we didn't do it. So my sense just on the property insurance line is we might want to take a look at that demolition coverage, and I know it's already costing us more for property insurance, but we might want to request a higher limit there.
I've had conversation with the underwriting staff about, EMC underwriters about that, and I've added extra demolition to some of the larger manufacturing that I do. It doesn't cost much to add a little more demolition. So that would be a good move to do, and I will approach them again on that one.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for Dennis, or comments, concerns? Patrick?
Just one thing I think before we're done with this item is directly goes to the Chapel Street Water Tower. If you do forward this on for final approval, would you like to see something in what the impacts of that would be, so you could make a decision next time, or?
I think I'd like to see what the cost is
Yeah.
for increased demolition coverage. I personally don't think we need to look at covering replacement value on the water tower.
I can pretty much tell you that. We're talking small numbers of hundreds.
Okay.
Very small numbers of hundreds. Because I've added it onto another plant, and it was it was not that big a deal. And I asked them about, well, I went through that conversation with the underwriter once before, so, but I would suggest that, yes, come back at me and tell me to increase it to at least 100,000 for demolition. That would be the recommendation. I've asked EMC to change their endorsements and build in a bigger, you've got a lot of municipalities got a lot of big buildings. They're located downtown in their communities. It would make sense to have,
Right.
because it costs a lot of money to haul bricks and mortar away. It would make a lot of sense to have at least 100,000, and they're not paying much for it. They're not charging much for it.
Sure.
So that would be the answer to that question.
So Patrick, is that something we would do here, or would we bring it forward and make that recommendation then?
If there's enough consensus on that point, we would include that, and if we move it to the regular meeting, the item would reflect that, the cost and everything, and the policy.
Okay.
What's our timeline on the renewal?
July 10th,
Yeah.
July 10th, right?
or the 9th, rather.
I guess I had a question, Regan, echoing what you say about, obviously, we have a real life example of where that cost would have made sense. $100,000 would not have covered
Right.
demolition of the water tower. Are there subsequently higher amounts that would be available
For demolition?
for demolition?
I've got to hash that out with the underwriter.
Okay.
You know, I've got it on another policy I've got it on other
Okay.
policies, and I know what it costs. And I just got to get EMC to go ahead and tell me that they can do it.
So I guess maybe if there's consensus, bring it back, but have a couple variations of 100,000, 500,000, a million. I mean,
Right.
kind of see what the actual price comparison would be, because if we went to 50 to 100, great, we saved $50,000, but we still would have been $100,000 out of pocket for whatever
Right.
it was, at least, or a couple $100,000
Well,
out of
and
pocket.
granted, that was a unique
But that's also a
demolition.
lot smaller than
Right.
City Hall or something else if
True.
the world blows up and we got to take down the City Hall building or something.
You're
It's a
right.
very, very good point, Regan.
I'll ask a couple of questions. I'll get back to Patrick and Ann on it, what would cost for 100, 250.
Okay.
And,
But given the timeline, we should probably bring this forward to the regular meeting with that information be provided at that time.
if we don't have it by that time, we can endorse the policy at any time.
Okay.
Thanks, Dennis. Is that consensus? We're all comfortable?
Yep.
So we will bring this forward to the July 6th meeting with that request for additional information on the demolition coverages.
All right, thank you all.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
All right, now, item number 8, State Highway 89 project update with Rupert Milkie. Get through all my insurance paper. It's Mr. Leith is here.
Oh, that's nice.
Is this Aaron Hills?
Are we debating streetlights again?
Maybe.
All right. I got a few slides here that I'm going to go through pretty quickly. Just wanted to more or less give an update of State Highway 89. I know we're still working on 1660, but as these projects start early enough and develop over the series of a bunch of years, we wanted to just kind of answer some questions and provide some information for the council tonight. If you have any questions, kind of where we're at and what are the issues. There are a few things at the end I know with this project that I just kind of wanted to throw out there just so we can kind of talk about getting some decisions down the road and at least just kind of get you thinking about that. So anyways, without further ado, there is our wonderful Farnham Street, and obviously, as you all know, that there's been some work done historically on it, but primarily it still remains the old concrete construction. Part of this roadway is an urban section down to about the school, or Waterloo Street, and then from there it turns into a rural section which continues to the outer limits of the city. So what's the project? So the project here is defined as starting at Park Avenue. So this would be up to the intersection of Highway 73, so Kurth Brewery, Apple Tree Restaurant area. And it would also extend then south on 89 through Poet, Folsom, past the high school, through the Waterloo Street intersection and end at Avalon Road intersection. This is slightly different than we had talked about when we had initially met with the DOT and brought this project up. We were proposing on taking it all the way south to the city limits. During the scoping meeting, it was kind of scaled back just due to needs and looking at where the volume and the traffic and the primary upgrades were more warranted. So let's just talk briefly about schedule, just kind of let everybody know where we're at. So the construction is slated for 2022 with advanceable to 2021. So if budget money is available, if things are in order, this could go for the 2021 construction season. So the public informational meeting number 1, so there will be a meeting where, if you remember all the PIMs that we had gone through with 1660, those will be held here somewhere in the city at a date and location to be determined by the department and staff, just basically to go through the project, lay things out. That'll be later in 2017. It hasn't been scheduled yet, but there's one planned on the kind of overall schedule. That will be followed up with a second meeting early in 2018 after some advancement of the design has been done. And then early in 2018, the department is defining 60% completion of plans. So again, at that point, we should have received some good feedback, some input. We've had kind of the general consensus from residents on the route or in the city, and we'll have those plans available. About that same time, the department will be completing the environmental documents in early spring of 18. Then 90% plans will come in 2020, the beginning of 2020. Obviously, with an advanceable date of 2021, they would be letting the project in 2020 theoretically. Now, again, that could be a year later, depending on if it's on the 2022 schedule. Again, so that's just kind of the advanceable type or best case timeline schedule, if you will. Now, just note, I hit some real kind of highlights. There's hundreds or possibly thousands of items that fall in between here. In addition, the utility work that we'll be talking about in a few minutes will also be weaved into these dates as well. So a little bit about the design parameters. So I know there's been, with any good project, there's some great rumors about what it is. So I kind of hope to dispel that and kind of lay out what this is. The pavement design remains to be determined. So there's a current or initial indication that this will be an asphalt road. So they'll be tearing up all the concrete and putting down an asphalt road. That hasn't been officially determined yet, but that's kind of where the numbers are generally kind of leading the design for the pavement right now. Obviously, we're not into the traffic volumes that we see out on 1660 here, which is obviously a concrete road reconstruction. So this will be a little bit more of a minor route and have a much smaller pavement cross-section design. There will be 5-foot ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides of the project, and that will extend for the full length. So basically from Park Street all the way down to the Avalon Road intersection. I know there's sidewalk obviously on the high school side down past the church now to Avalon, but it will also be on the golf course side as well. Ultimately there will be a crossing that will be at Avalon, so there will be a crosswalk there where people that are on the golf course side, if they want to cross, can cross prior to getting to the intersection. The frontage road will remain, so right across from the high school there's a short frontage road that the city does have. That it's basically, there's no curb on it, it's just asphalt that was intersected with Farnham Street. It does extend down and there are several driveways. I think there's 4 or 5 driveways that come off of it and people can access their property off of that. We did talk with the DOT in the scoping meeting about the potential of looking at removing that and just extending driveways. 2 rationales behind that. One was eliminate the future maintenance or upkeep that the city has responsibility for that section. And the other one is obviously there are some utilities in the area, but there really isn't any utility under there. Initial discussion from the DOT indicated that there was an original request or resolution passed by the city back during the last reconstruction that indicated that they did want those properties accessed off of a frontage road because of the direct proximity to the high school. As the city engineer, I kind of question the logic there with such minimal driveways and actually being in the front of the school. I would think obviously if they were down more closer to the entrance to the high school parking lot, there might be more congestion. The frontage road and the access are further south along the main entrance or the front entrance to the high school. So I know there's been some discussion about possibly at least at staff level, about maybe reapproaching the DOT again and seeing if there is a possibility of putting the removal in there, if that's a council direction or a desire to do so. I know some conversations have happened, and I can't speak for Davis, but I know he's been contacted by a couple owners who support the removal of the road. Obviously, there would be an increased front yard and some other benefits to those people. But there would be direct access onto 89 from their driveway. So there are some pros and cons, but that is one of the items that I think we wanted to kind of lay out tonight just for at least getting the discussion going or get some initial thoughts.
It's okay. I just had a question on the removing the frontage road. Do you guys know if there's parking on the Farnham now in front of the school on both sides, or one side or the other? Because if you take away that frontage road, you're taking away ability for cars, like property owners, to park on the street. So I guess I would want to be cognizant of that. Sure. Like if we're losing parking for residents.
And I think we'll address parking here in a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So if the frontage road remains, there will be a slight widening of that pavement section through there. And I just noted here that there will be actually 4 feet between there's no sidewalk there now, so by installing a sidewalk, there will be 4 feet between the back of the new sidewalk and the edge of the frontage road pavement. So we'll really have a very kind of narrow corridor there. So again, in essence, you're almost making it all asphalt through there with this narrow strip of grass again. So again, just a thought to kind of understand, and I have a picture of it here coming up in the next slide, so we can take a look at it. As part of the entire length of the project, there will be some improved drainage upgrades or construction done to help with drainage issues that currently exist now. The widening, and I mentioned that, we'll get to those cross sections in a minute, but that will accommodate on-street bike lanes So again, any federally funded project is going to be requiring those, much like we have out here on James Street. And then the profile of the street will remain similar. What I mean by that is the alignment and the vertical grade of the street will remain very similar throughout the corridor, so we're not really raising any intersections or changing access to properties at this time. So this is just kind of a picture of the frontage road. It's a little dark in the picture, but you can see by looking at the pavement. I don't know what Whistler rating this is. I'd have to look it up, but just off the cuff, it's probably a 3 or 4. It looks pretty terrible here. But I did take the shot specifically down the corridor, so you can kind of see as you look down, you see a fire hydrant on the right side of the picture and then the power poles. There is some space there now between the two pavements. Obviously understand that the street will get wider and there will be a sidewalk installed there. So you can see that it really starts to encroach on this frontage road. And so at that point, I think there's some options here with, how to proceed with this frontage road. But I do think it's something that we certainly should kind of give some consideration to. Are we going to keep it? Are we going to rehab that frontage road? Is there a sidewalk going to be placed there? Do we affect those driveways? I guess what direction does the city and staff come up with as far as going for this frontage road? Safety improvements. This is actually fairly important. When the initial scoping was done and some investigation of this corridor, there was some safety concerns. One would be at Avalon and 89. So this project will widen that intersection and improve the site visibility. Right now it's a little hard to see just due to grades and accessibility of that intersection. There will be intersection widening at Waterloo Street and slight realignment there as well. As you're familiar, there's kind of a sharp turn there where it comes out. So that will be improved. Again, all the ADA compliant sidewalks and ramps will be installed, so that'll be an upgrade right now. And then the other thing that the Department of Transportation wanted to obviously take a little closer look at were the turning movements at 73 and 89 or Park Street. So they just want to make sure that if there's anything that has to be improved in that intersection, that those improvements obviously get installed. Primarily, I think they're looking at right turns as you're coming up 89, going eastbound or to the right onto 73 or Park Avenue. Keep in mind, Kurth Brewery is there, and that is a historic property. So much like the F&M Bank on the 16 project, there will be some restrictions of what can be changed and improved on that side of the intersection. But certainly, making it a safe intersection and looking at those turning movements and safety concerns will be part of this project. So now just comparing the widths, I know this is a lot of text here, but I think there's a couple of just things I wanted to point out that I thought were important for people to understand. So on Avalon Road to Waterloo Street, so I'm going to start on the south end and work north. So for that section, it's rural section right now. The pavement is 11 foot wide with 8 foot gravel shoulders. So essentially each side of the road is about 19 feet wide. The new section will be with curb and gutter, and that will be, if you do the math here, it's 18 feet wide. So essentially it's the same footprint through there. It's just slightly narrower on one side, but again, keep in mind you have these wide shoulders. So then continuing from Waterloo to the frontage road, which we had just discussed kind of across from the high school, you can see here that there's kind of a combination of gravel shoulder and parking lane urban section there. Again, you're averaging here 19 to 20 feet. If you look at the new pavement proposed section, you're looking at about 24 feet. So again, here's our widening that we're talking about. That's really necessary to accommodate the bike lane primarily, and then the parking lane through that section. There's parking now, but essentially the difference between these two widths is the bike lane width. And then from that frontage road point all the way to 73, right now we have basically it's a 20-foot parking pavement on both sides urban section, and then there's the 2-foot curb and gutter to get us up to about 22 feet. The new section will be about 24 feet. So again, a slight widening to accommodate that bike lane, but still maintaining that parking lane throughout the whole section. So again, much like on James Street where we're just widening a foot or two on each side of the street, this will be very similar in concept. So again, it shouldn't be a huge impact to properties from that standpoint. So let's talk a little bit about the utilities quick. So we'll be replacing and upsizing a short section of water main. The rest of the water main under there is relatively new or has been replaced in 2012. There was a large project to replace quite a bit of it. So we'll be obviously replacing a remaining section that's older and smaller in diameter, kind of down by the high school area. So again, there'll be a relatively small part of the project will be a water main replacement. There is some older services in this corridor that weren't replaced with the water main before. They just replaced the main and reconnected the old services. But obviously, since we're redoing the street, we've talked to Water and Light, and they wish to go ahead and replace those services. So that'll be part of it. We'll be replacing the sanitary sewer and relocation in the street right away. With this, note that there was some sewer replaced again in 12. We're not going to replace it again. We're going to leave that in place and replace the older pieces. There is the sanitary sewer laterals were replaced at the property lines as well. So again, pretty standard here. There is a section of sanitary that runs from the high school down towards the frontage road, and then it actually cuts between houses down the Waterloo Street, and then runs down Waterloo Street. Our goal here is to eliminate that sewer that goes between the houses in an easement, so we'll be pulling that all out into the street. So again, that'll be part of the replacement of the sanitary, so we'll have to lower that grade slightly and realign that sewer so it's in the right of way rather than, through an easement through yards. The new storm sewer is part of this. We'll be replacing the culverts at the Second Ward Creek. So just down from 73, those pipes that are there are corrugated metal right now. Those tend to age and rust and over time collapse. So those will be replaced as part of this project. The new storm sewer will be added down in the rural section where we're putting curb and gutter in that area that we're upgrading. And then there will be quite a few more inlets added just to kind of get up to code with DOT requirements throughout that section. So again, just to kind of touch on the water here, I got a little graphic. So you see the blue stretch in the middle from Waterloo Street north. So there is obviously throughout that whole corridor, it's a pretty minor stretch, maybe 25% of that entire project length. The sanitary, you can see there's some gaps here, and this does include eliminating the piece that goes over to Waterloo Street. So again, it's not the entire length, but there are pieces that we want to target here. This does not include any lift station work on Waterloo. Again, that will be tying into that, but again, I think your lift station's in relatively good shape there, so we didn't include any upgrades or any changes to that. So just talk about some quick costs as I'm wrapping up here. Right now, the program cost is an 80-20 federal state split for all the roadway and storm sewer improvements. It's about $3.6 million. Again, I'm working off of the one more recent SMA. There are CSS funds available. If you're familiar with the money we applied on James Street, it's a little different formula here because that got changed since that last SMA, but we're still looking at probably about $47,000 is the initial estimate right now. So those are funds that are available for you to make improvements in the corridor as you see fit. The sewer estimate is 100% city cost, obviously. Right now we're looking at that to be about $670,000 and kind of ballpark for that. That includes laterals and the main and manhole replacements. The water estimate's down around $291 currently. And then the street lighting for the project is a cost share, but that's kind of, I guess, still to be determined between Water and Light and the DOT. I think the SMA is a 50-50 split for standard lighting system, but we have to define what that is as far as standard and what locations that's to be replaced. So we don't have a dollar amount yet, but we're working on that. So, yeah.
Quick question for you, Jason. Sanitary and water estimates there, is that without delivery, engineering costs?
That's everything inclusive.
Everything included,
Yes.
okay.
So that would have the engineering and contingency as an admin cost built in.
Okay.
Again, that's a prorated percentage of the construction cost. So again, until we bring in a task order, we don't have a true number exactly for the engineering, but we factored in a percent of construction. And I believe those are numbers that we provided the DOT for the SMA. So basically, the final slide here, just a couple things, I guess, to leave you with. One thing is that the DOT has asked, and we certainly want to bring this up so we're all on the same page. They're just looking to confirm location of parking on street. Again, remember the city has responsibility for those parking lane costs. Right now, what's being planned or what's drawn up right now is in the 30% plans are parking on both sides of the street from Waterloo all the way to 73. Now, I know that there's some rural sections down there. I know that there's some parking for the soccer fields, but I don't believe people are parking on the frontage road side of the street very often, if at all, because of the difficulty and probably no crosswalks and sidewalks and some other things occurring. So I would envision that the way it's being proposed, and again, you have the ability to change this if you so desire, but I would estimate that you're going to lose maybe 8 to 10 parking stalls south of Waterloo on the high school side, just because that will become an urban section with no parking through there. At least that's what's being proposed. But you'll also gain those same amount of stalls on the opposite side of the road, because now there's going to be curb and gutter, and the parking will be made available on that side. So from a number, I can't emphatically say an exact gain to loss is equal. But at this point, there will be obviously improved intersections and crosswalks and things there to make it safe for people to park on the opposite side of the road and get across, obviously. So there was some discussion about pushing the parking further south. I think you can gain some stalls there if you so desire, but again, remember that obviously comes with costs to the city as well. So right now, this is kind of what I think the scoping meeting had laid out, and I think that, at least staff was comfortable understanding that. I don't think there was any real net loss. Now, I don't know how many people really ever park on that frontage road, to be frankly honest with you, and maybe somebody else knows a little better. Historically, I don't remember a lot of people parking in on that frontage road. I think the residents sometimes do, but they also have still a fairly long driveway to park in now. Plus, if we eliminated the frontage road, they would have even a longer driveway to park in. So that kind of is kind of my take on the parking, but certainly at some point we'd want confirmation on those, those parking locations, just to make sure that what's drafted up in the initial 30% plan is the direction that we'd want to go. The frontage road determination is another thing. What I'll offer on this is, here's a couple of my thoughts. We could certainly go back to the DOT and re-have that conversation. Certainly, I think if the council's will was to eliminate it and there was some resolution or some direction that was approved, I think that would be needed to go back to the DOT and petition them to put the removal in the contract. I don't think removing that pavement is going to be a very high expense. But, it probably makes sense to do with the project, but the DOT seemed to be reluctant to include it when we kind of brought it up in the scoping meeting, just because of the past desire of the council and the history. I do think that certainly could be something that and again, I think there's some impact on the residents, assuming that, there's support for that. I do think if you are going to remove it and there is support for it, there could be a possibility of doing that before 2021 and just temporarily connecting the driveways to 73, and then when they come back, the driveways can be reinstalled with the new roadway. I think, again, that would be a cost to you, but even if the frontage road was removed, I'm assuming that would be all your cost, even if it was part of the DOT project, because it is considered a local road. The last thing could be, again, something as in the new road could go in and it could always be removed at a later date. So I think you have some options on timing here, but we just wanted to kind of get a thought process if there was support for that from the council, or if we're going to leave it as is, that's the direction that the DOT is going to go. They're just going to build the new street, and then we're going to get the sidewalks pushed out towards that pavement a little bit. So I certainly would encourage you to take a look at it next time you're down there and kind of envision if that makes sense to leave it in or take it out, and then we'll get some direction. The next thing to consider is there are some CSS funds available here, $47,000 and change, I think I said, currently estimated. So those are improvements that could either be crosswalk related, lighting related, some type of enhancement that you guys are looking at. At some point, the DOT is going to start asking, what does the city want to do with it? They haven't yet, but that's coming. So keep that in mind. And then lastly are the bike lanes. They're going to be installed regardless, but the question is, do we want them painted or marked as bike lanes? They can always be painted or marked at a later date. If they're painted initially, keep in mind that there's always a maintenance component that the city's responsible for to refresh the paint every few years to make sure that they're marked properly, and a cost with that. Just for back history, as of now, I believe the way James Street is set up is the bike lanes will be there but not marked. Or part of them will be marked, but I don't think they're marking both lines. I think they're just marking the outside line or something. So there is some options of how those lanes get marked. They can also be marked with symbols or no symbols. Again, those are future maintenance costs. But again, I think they had asked about how we wanted the bike lanes marked on 89, and I don't think we had any clear direction or council had any input into that. So we just want to kind of throw that out there. So anyways, I got 4 things I want to leave you with on this. That kind of wraps up the presentation, but if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them. If not, I'll write them down and try and get you an answer back.
Just a quick question. You had costs for water and sewer. Do you have an idea of what the city's share of the road?
I do not. I'd have to look back at the SMA.
That's actually, I'm going to springboard off of what you were going to say. I just asked him, Kim. You know, with delivery for sanitary and water, looking at just shy of like $1 million, and looking at the SMA, building into some of the section 4, some of the subsections in the SMA, parking lane costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's some costs that are built into here that might be behoove us to discuss at the next ad hoc potentially for budgeting appropriately. Try to put some money set aside going forward in preparation for this. If we got 3 or 4 years to start saving, with parking lane costs, so it might be a short stretch, but it's definitely going to be not a small expense. And then obviously with the design and construction aspect from R&M for those sections too, with all that the new pipe and whatnot. So secondly, I would say if there's people reaching out to Davis to get rid of the frontage road and do a long driveway, it might behoove us as well to, we're adding new roads to our system for local. If we get rid of one that's obviously in a bad Whistler rating, might be beneficial to try to get that off of our list, not have to worry about it for long-term maintenance, and it turns into long driveways for them. And people are showing interest. It's definitely worth a conversation and having city staff or Jason pursuing that. I would say having sidewalk between 2 roads would almost make the sidewalk people not want to walk on it too much. It almost kind of be pinched between 2 roads. I don't know, kind of my personal opinion.
And I think it wouldn't be very aesthetic. You only have a small stretch. My only comment was if as far as painting the bike lanes, I would recommend we strongly consider as much paint as possible with signs, just because people aren't used to seeing bikes on our roads right now. We're putting these bike lanes in for a reason, and bike safety with cars it's an ongoing process, but if we can make it as visible as possible, it's a safety concern.
Because there is several county routes that do come through town.
Sure, and even just having the bike symbol, so that way people who are driving get some idea of what those extra lines are for. It's just a visual to help drivers recognize they should be looking for bikers. So the earlier we paint it, even, if we're not seeing a lot of traffic yet, the better.
If you built it.
And I would have said that about James Street too, but I don't think I was here, so.
Is there, Jason, is there an updated SMA prior to the one that Kelly signed in March of 15?
I do not believe there is, but I think that's due to be revised or amended with updated information now that the 30% plan is out. But I also think that the DOT was looking to confirm parking and some other things that'll obviously impact those numbers, like you said, because the parking costs are attributable back to the city. So I would guess that would be forthcoming. My guess would be sometime here in the near future with some updated information. And so, again, if there's any feedback that we can give the DOT, I think that'll give us a more accurate, SMA draft when it gets sent back for amendment. So
I guess the one point I was kind of checking on with you is you had 80-20 in your breakdown, but I'm seeing 75-25 in the current SMA. And I'm wondering if that's 75-25 seems odd to me. Usually it's an 80-20 split.
It's 80-20, yeah. So again, that was a draft that was for the scoping meeting. So again, I think there's some things in there that just need to be adjusted and updated since that's fairly old. So
thank you.
Andy? So if we decided to pull off that frontage road and extend those driveways, who bears the cost of the driveway?
Well, again, I think because it's a local road, my guess is that the state is probably going to bear the cost for extension of the driveway back onto the local.
Regardless if we did anything with the frontage road or not, or?
No, if the driveway
They're
aprons
only
themselves
for
that
pulling.
come off of 89 will be cost that the DOT will pick up, but once we get past the sidewalk, anything associated with the driveways at that point would likely be the local share, either the removal and the extension to get to that point would be my guess right now. They just didn't seem to be interested in even discussing it with us. They shot us down pretty quick, kind of even interrupted us and said, nope. So I don't know what the hang up there is, but I think there's 4 or 5 driveways there. So it's actually a fairly small number, and I don't think there's any, I think most of them are asphalt as well. So I don't think the extension, the driveways are a large cost. I could put some numbers together just for consideration. But again, removal of that pavement's pretty quick, and then restoration, that's, placing some topsoil and restoration and some extension of the driveways. I just don't think that's a real large cost. The more of the issue, I think, comes to the underlying right-of-way. The right-of-way jogs out there, so that it's not city right-of-way, then a narrow strip of privately owned property, and then the DOT right-of-way for 89. The right-of-way basically just gets real wide there, and it jogs out, and the frontage road is actually in the DOT right-of-way. So it's, if that was something that would remain, I would think that the driveways could be extended out, but I don't know that there would be any land necessarily given back, but it would be all front yards, that would be likely maintained by the property owners. But that would be something I think we'd have to kind of discuss and sort out.
So this is basically a good refresher and kind of restart on taking a look at this project. There's nothing we really need to take action on, just kind of getting us food for thought and things we need to start planning for now. So I guess we'll just trust for you guys to bring this back on the agenda when you think we should have another update, or should one of us request the agenda item be added for further discussion in the future, we can tackle it then. Sound prudent?
That'll work, yep.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jason. And now we have the T-grant discussion. All right. Consider the city making application for Wisconsin Department of Transportation T-grant program.
If I could start, Reagan.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Patrick.
I
Thank
think what we're looking at this point is, in light of the MOU that was approved in the regular session, direction to get city staff working on the T-grant. There's a couple things that I think that we may need a resolution passed, or something to put the stamp on the city that, yes, we're going to go ahead and do this. And then the other thing is, I continue to talk with Jason about assistance from Rupert Milkie on the application process. They've got experience even with the latest Columbus T-grants, back the Enerpac Gateway project. So what I expect is to have a task order on that coming forward, but if it behooves the council, we would put something on the regular agenda next time, just as a supportive motion or resolution to say, yes, we're going forward and ready to get this started.
Again, we've had pretty extensive discussions on this topic. I feel comfortable that we're all in agreement that, we should bring this forward to the next regular meeting. Then we can seek resolution and perhaps even some task order details.
I agree.
All right. All right, so now we have consider senior center building roof condition.
If I could,
Kim Lang is here.
Yeah, Kim is going to kind of fill you in, as I included in the packet, just information about just seeing some issues with the roof at the senior center. I know Kim worked very hard to make sure that the issues were addressed as a stopgap, but clearly that some other work and action is needed for that building. So I'll just turn it to Kim here for.
Thank
the next part.
Yes, thank you. I wish I was coming to say, oh, the facility is just wonderful, because it is for the most part. But we had an issue with our cooling system during some of the heated weather, and a lot of the humidity caused an issue with our central air, one of our central air units on the roof. Taz Heating and Cooling came and repaired that. It was just effect of the condensation froze the unit. So they fixed that. Unfortunately, while we were up there looking at what was causing that water to leak through the ceiling, we got a good look at the roof. I do have pictures, and they will kind of tell you the story. What we found up there was that I call it like a tar layer. It's not really a tar layer, but it's some sealing that we had put on several years ago. There's 2 coats of it on, and it's worn off in a lot of places. It's peeling off in a lot of places. We've also found that from standing water in various places, especially around the heating and cooling units, which are the heaviest parts of the building, that there's soft areas that are probably fairly hazard to walk on. The DPW did walk on them, as did Taz Heating and Cooling, to repair those areas. And it was we wouldn't want anyone to walk on them on a regular basis. Luckily, no one has to. But that just means that the decking is compromised. There's probably some rotting due to the water standing. When we looked at different areas, you can see the wet areas, you can see that there's peeling of that layer that's on top of the decking. And there are actually physical holes that go through the roof. They haven't gotten to the point where they're causing leaking into the ceiling of the senior center, but they are evidently, they're allowing water in somewhere. So it's no longer really an option of us just patching things, because you can't patch decking that's not holding its own. And when you have 2 heavy heating and cooling units on it, it becomes a precarious situation. At this point, I've talked to the American RSI. They're the company that put the elastomeric coating on in 2011. They are going to come and look at the roof and see what their ideas might be, especially for a temporary fix. We did put some tar on the roof to close up the most obvious holes to help keep any rain damage from proceeding. But that's a very temporary fix. It's not something that's going to permanently fix or solve our problems. We originally put an aluminum roof on in 1998. Then after that point, in 2011, we put the elastomeric coating on. In 2014, there were a few leaks that were noticed in the senior center, and American RSI came back and patched those. At that time, I would have assumed that they would have made a report on the condition of the roof as a whole, because they were patching a few cracked areas. But there's no record of that that we can find anywhere. But it's very evidently been some time involved in making the roof in the condition that it is. It wasn't something that happened overnight. Are there any questions?
Are these pictures after the tarring?
No, they were prior to the tarring. We
So
tarred.
what am I looking at, say, like in this photo here, is that standing water, is that?
That is standing water. That is also indicating that's the soft area. That's why the water's standing there, because that part of the roof is a little bit softer, so it does buckle there. The DPW came and put the tar on the next day after those pictures.
So will you, once you get the more information from the contractor, you'll come back?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I need to find out from him what his recommendation would be. I would say that for certain, those areas that are soft, that decking would have to be replaced. It's not something that's going to dry out and be strong enough to continue to hold the units up on the roof, so.
What do you think the source of the water is? Is it the units themselves, just the condensation and the?
Well, that particular water was still from the rain. We had had rain the day before. I'm sorry. Because the roof itself, because of the weight and the fact that the decking is starting to warp and so forth from the wetness of it, it slopes even more and holds even more water. So it will continue to deteriorate as time goes on.
Any other questions or comments? It sounds like this is just an introduction, and then we'll work with you guys on a solution, I guess. But at this point, it sounds like it's still kind of a fishing expedition.
Yeah, we're going to be having them come and give us their suggestions and then go from there.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Thanks for bringing it to our attention, Kim.
you're welcome.
Alright. Next item is city website and social media assistance. Did we want to tackle that tonight, or I know we've tabled it once or twice before, so.
At least once, yeah.
Mhm.
I can introduce it and gauge the feeling on the discussion. Just quickly, this is, I think, utilizing the skills of our intern this summer, JT Siskowski. He's working on the James Street project, but from his training and education, has skills in promotion and really understands IT, the web type of thing. So with the departure of Dave Carlson, I felt if we could extend his JT's hours during the summer, he can help us with web page promotion, web page work that was where the gap was created when Dave left. So we've got the budget with Dave's departure under the CDA budget or the community development budget. JD's very interested and willing to do that. My thought right now is 3 to 5 hours a week is all we really need in this area to make sure that our website gets updated, and I'm learning every day, and I know other staff are, but we have other things we're working with, and there's only so much I know to it. So with JT's age and actually his experience and his excitement, I think it won't take him long to get things squared away as we want him to. So,
Matt?
Currently, I know for his internship for helping you guys out during James Street stuff, how many hours is he working right now?
It's set for the whole season, so 400 hours total. Right now, I think we're a little on the heavier side because of we had Alex here, and then there was a little bit of a gap, so we had a little bit of room to get him inundated a little more in the beginning. Yeah. But so he's 10 to 15 a week.
Okay. Because I know after I kind of saw this, I went onto the city website and kind of clicked around for a little bit. And I think there was like some links that were not working, some social media stuff that wasn't tied or whatever it was. So I think this would be definitely beneficial for us to have him get in there, use the Gen Xers or Wires or Zers or whatever they are now, and tackle the city website and put some good experiential knowledge to good use and get him in there.
Would he have knowledge and experience to help with the paging system and that was brought up during the listening session last week?
I'm thinking that's one area I'd like to work with him. Yeah. I don't know, but I think, like I said, with what he knows, his breadth
aptitude might come into play too.
Yeah,
right?
he's going to be able to pick it up quicker than some of us. So
I do know I tried to find that after we talked about that, and it took me a little while. It's buried up in the site settings or something, which seemed kind of oddball to me, I guess. But so I think it'd be more than a good idea to have them get in there and start putting a fresh look on it or getting some new ideas in there or whatever. He said that the money would come out of what was Dave's budget line item.
For those hours devoted to
hours.
that, yes. We would carefully monitor that, and he would continue to be paid in the other area for the James Street project.
And I'm assuming this would just probably making an amendment or something to hit the bucket hours of 400 hours for the year. You would just add on subsequent hours, or kind of just make it
I
a free
think-
for all and let them go 3 to 5 hours roughly with monitored.
Yeah, we would just, anything additional, we'd monitor, and he would be, those would be as an employee of the city working with city website, social media.
Andy?
And as far as his rate of pay, that would stay the same.
That's what I'm proposing. Mm-hmm.
Right. Interns got to get the money.
You guys have any other thoughts or concerns?
No, I think it's a good idea. It's a creative solution.
Okay, so yeah, sounds like we have consensus to move it forward to the next regular meeting. At what kind of action will we be seeking at the next regular meeting then to kind of just firm this up?
I think just an affirmative motion, just to say
Okay.
we support this.
Good deal. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.
And so after that, we have an update on the city and school facility use agreement.
I believe from the last committee of the whole, the update is still working to set that meeting with Superintendent Duman. We've proposed, the mayor and I have proposed to sit down the last week of June, so we're just settling on that date.
Okay. Who might be involved from the staff level on our side of things from the cities?
At this point, how we talked, at least initially, just me, just to get the issues
Okay.
out there. I mean, in terms of the background, definitely we're taking into account the direct issues, Amy Jo and Davis, anybody else who has their fingers in it. So.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully when we come back on the 6th, you guys will have a date set at least.
Yeah, or maybe even a meeting under our belt.
Yeah,
So-
that'd be great. Yeah, it'll take a couple bites at the apple, I think.
Mhm.
Most things have a little give and take, so the sooner the better. So we're comfortable moving on after that update? Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so next would be consider amendment to the policy for accepting donations to various city departments. This is coming back to us.
And this is one that really doesn't have a time sensitivity. If it's something we want to set aside for now,
My personal feeling at this point in the evening is I'd like to table this and bring it back. It's got no kind of, as you're saying, Patrick, there's no time pressure on us.
Yeah.
So again, getting into the lateness of the evening, probably better attack that with brighter eyes and bushier tails.
Understood. Yep.
All right, so that will be tabled. Number 14, then, am I going in line here? Offer of land donation to city adjacent to Kiwanis Park.
As the memo in your packet describes, just was recently approached by a gentleman who owned a property on Farnham Street and had a back lot that is, if you look from the map in your packet, it's somewhat detached from the property, and as he described, the new owners aren't really interested in it. It's adjacent to Kiwanis Park, so he thought, would the city be interested in taking that in? The issue that staff has discussed is we don't exactly know, how that piece is laid out. The map kind of shows it, but one of the suggestions was to have a certified survey map done. With that, there's cost involved, and how does that play in to someone wanting to donate it? So I brought it here just, I think, as an initial kick at the cat, just to see, how that's received by you, and we can follow through accordingly.
Is it showing that it kind of runs along the ditch line there?
Yeah, it's like a kind of a triangular piece there right along, the Second Ward Creek coming into the park.
Rod,
Does Columbus have a certain amount of green space we have to have? Is there like a percentage of land that has to be designated as green space or anything?
like as prescribed by the state?
Yeah,
or-
yeah.
I
No,
wouldn't think so.
No.
That's all local.
yeah.
I don't think we have a park and open space plan, unless it's in the comprehensive plan.
Those generally come into play when there's a large development and we require a donation of green space, but this I don't think would apply at all.
Yeah. Matt?
I guess kind of looking at the map and thinking about it, not to look a gift horse in the mouth, but looking at aerial pictures and kind of going down there and looking at it, it seems like it would be a chunk that would be kind of isolated out away from the park, be along that ditch line. But I guess looking at future use of that in regards to the park itself, I'd be hard pressed to think of a use for this near term or long term, just kind of with its proximity to the houses and tucked behind I believe the old like VFW property line and that kind of stuff. So I think it's very generous of them. I'd be hesitant to spend, a couple $1,000s on a CSM to have a parcel that's going to sit, unless we end up picking up a lot more property in that area. Kind of, I don't know. For me, it seems kind of nice, but then maybe not necessary. I guess so.
Do we know what lot number 643 Farnham Street was? I'm just curious.
There's,
It's that double-decker house, two brown
Is it
garage doors that's been for
990.4?
sale for a couple of years.
Directly in front of the property that they're proposing to vacate, so to speak.
Yeah, 990.4 and 990.6 show the same owners.
Okay.
When I checked it on the county.
Andy?
Yep, yeah, I kind of agree with Matt. I would have to see where, first of all, how big it is. I don't know. I didn't see a description of the lot size, but it is also a highly flooded area. So, I mean, I don't really see a point in accepting the donation of some swampland that's going to be hard to use.
Pain to mow.
What's that?
Yeah, might be a bit of a pain to mow. Extra maintenance.
I mean, I would be inclined to accept a donation of land from anybody, but I would want the survey done. So to everyone else's point, and I think to the question Patrick is raising, is it cost benefit here? And that I don't know.
Is there a value of this land that?
Well, there's always a value to
Like,
land.
what is that?
There is a taxable value that we're receiving from property tax from that parcel that would be divided by some degree. So we would be incorporating more land into city property that's no longer on the tax levies.
Yeah.
So if we did have to pay for the CSM, we're putting money out of pocket for a parcel that do even have any potential long-term use for it, and it would be loss of tax revenue, where that's probably I would assume that's probably the reason why they don't want it, is because it's kind of a tree area next to the river that provides them no use outside of their own backyard behind the house. If they can be relieved of it, it would cut their property taxes down in some degree. And I feel like if it's going to be a gift, to then turn around and ask Mr. Schoenwetter, to fork up upwards of a couple $1,000s for a CSM, I don't know, might be a little bit gift horsey in the mouth again.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that maybe he would be willing to pay for the survey and then go from there, but that's.
So to clarify, Patrick, is 1223 and 980, are those part of the Kiwanis?
1223, I think, is a VFW.
Is it? Okay.
And then the 980 is all Kiwanis, because looking at the map, right where that little easement for the ditch line comes out, you have the back side of one of the baseball fields.
So that would be, it would make a really oddly shaped parcel
It would.
to transfer it.
Well, and would it even be able to get from Kiwanis Park, the 980 parcel, to the 990.6 without having some sort of easement through the VFW parcel? I feel like this is it would turn into a can of worms.
Right, but you'd still have the back of 990.4 before the, north of the ditch, or whatever my directionals are. You'd still have a line there in, and then 990.5 is going with the purchase, right?
I'm sorry, which one do you think is the VFW?
1223.
1223.
Is that right?
Yes, because you can see the parking lot inlet directly to the, I guess you'd call that north of there.
This is Farnham.
So 980 would be getting into
Kiwanis Park.
Kiwanis Park and that little blacktop.
990.2 was some sort of house, and then 990.4, I believe, is
On the face of it,
the
I don't
property
like it.
sold.
I don't see the benefit to the city. Not that everything has to be a direct benefit, but it's also, I think there's potential cans of worms, like you guys are saying, with access and the like. Yeah, I just,
The timing seems a little messy for me. It seems like the property has just been sold, but the previous owner is trying to offer it to us. And I'm just not quite sure how it's working right now.
good point.
Yeah, I just
That
want.
makes it even messier.
Paul's
This
Googling.
isn't anywhere near the
Is there,
VFW.
there's
for the
just an
record.
offer. on
Well,
it.
the old,
Well,
I'm sorry, the old VFW
American
building.
Legion.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
American
thank
The
you.
current preschool.
Get your groups.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was so
My apologies
confused.
to all veterans out there.
I was
and
very confused by
legionnaires
word.
and-
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying on me on that, Andy.
It's a landlocked parcel not owned by the person who's trying to give it to us.
I say
Okay,
run
all
away.
right. Very awesome.
Yeah,
That's
Sounds
my
like
official
there's a
position.
bodies buried on it or something.
hey, there could be something to that.
Well, yeah.
We don't have a dog park in the city limits.
How would you get to the dog park?
Footbridge?
You gotta get there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna have two really
Tom will
big dog
consider it if
owners.
990.5 goes with it.
Yeah.
If your dog's good enough, you could jump over.
My dog could jump over it.
Mine could.
So what's our consensus on this?
I-
My vote is
No.
No.
Thanks, but no.
yes.
A nice
It's
letter
a
from
very
the
nice
city
thought,
saying
but
thank you for
we just
your-
don't see the benefit.
I wrote down thanks, but no thanks.
There it is.
No.
The official city position.
Patrick
I believe it was
will
runaway.
Take it as a bonus.
All right, so now we are moving on to number 15. Consider resolution opposing efforts to repeal the personal property tax in Wisconsin.
Yeah, so I did put in your mailbox is a copy of a letter I sent to our legislators and the chairs of the Joint Finance Committee in the legislature, expressing our concern about efforts to repeal personal property tax. And I don't know how deeply we want to get into the issue, but to repeal the personal property tax would be a very, very difficult situation for municipalities and schools as they rely upon that as revenue. Currently, what's on the table and through the league, we're being told that if something passes, there will be a hold harmless. There'll be funds through extra shared revenue to cover our losses here. But I think, and at least my approach and perspective is, okay, that's fine, but to work with a shared revenue level as we've seen trending over the past few years, that always seems to go down. So will the money that, or the revenue that we gain from personal property tax truly be covered by the increase over time? I essentially expressed that in the letter, and I am asking the council if we want to do a resolution. In terms of what I know, I think the finance committee is dealing with it as potential amendments in the budget. There's standalone bills, but I think if they really want to do it, they'll do it through the budget. So the timing is
Suspect.
there's not a lot of time left for them to really get the budget finished. So if we even went to resolution, we may be even too late. to do that, because state budget is statutorily supposed to be approved by July 1st. They don't always meet that, but anyway, I thought it worthy to talk about it and discuss if we want to do a resolution or something else.
Regardless of timeline, I like the idea of a resolution for at least trying to speak as a whole body, if that's our consensus, to, officially and publicly voice our objection to that tax policy.
I'm on board with this.
I agree, Patrick. I think you really hit the main points.
Absolutely.
And what we've heard from Kim in regards to impact to the city, even if it ends up being a day late and a dollar short because of timing and whatnot, I think it's still a good idea. And I would say I'd personally invite State Senator Scott Fitzgerald to come down to a meeting and tell us why they think that this is an appropriate move and how it's going to impact the city. Because I think that this letter is going to go right into the old round filing bin when it gets there, but definitely worth our time to do a resolution for this.
That's certainly something we can do.
I definitely appreciate your letter, Patrick, because it's kind of like, same as the dark store theory. It's extremely critical to how we can operate and fund all the things we need to at the city level. And I, too, am apprehensive as far as being held harmless and for how long. And then at what point do we determine this community's share will either drop or raise?
Mm-hmm.
And
funding for it. I have been in contact with Senator Strobel's office several times
good.
and had a long conversation with them again today on it. And the thing that concerns me is the way that they're gonna pay for it is eliminating Governor Walker's proposed sales tax cuts and the income tax cuts that he has in the budget. And it just kind of goes back to what Patrick said, will the funding continue to be there after the first year? So.
And then what kind of tools do we have at our disposal? They're limited and restricted by the folks in Madison as it is, but we still have those tools at our disposal, and we can still go and increase mill, levy, all that good stuff, whatever. But what do you do when you just depend strict on state revenue share? I mean, there's no local control in that whatsoever.
So much for small government.
So should we ask Patrick to research or develop a resolution to bring forth to July 6th, regardless of if it's too late or not? And my
Sure.
hope is
Yes.
that there'll be enough of a public drumbeat on this that they'll pump their brakes and logic will find their way between the ears.
Well,
And-
worst case scenario, you pull it out next year when they bring it up again.
Right.
That being said, like I said, it's not unheard of that they don't get the budget done in time,
Mhm.
and this
Especially-
item may not be in part of the budget. It may come up as standalone bills in the Senate and the Assembly. So,
Good point.
yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Very important issue. Next, we have James Street Reconstruction Project Update.
Okay, I provided a memo in your packet just talking about the progress of the work outside. At the time, I think things were really going quickly with the weather. The favorable weather this week hasn't been quite as kind, but they keep going. A couple of things I just want to highlight here is, as I mentioned here in the memo, is at some point I think we need to coalesce around our tree plan, particularly the downtown. We have worked with DOT to make sure that those are included, but we have to provide, our species and how it's all going to work. That being said, I think in light of some of the conversation that was brought up at the listening session, there were some ideas there about planting along the corridor. I think that could be discussed. One thing I proposed in the memo here is, could there be a little bit of a subcommittee or a task force that could work together to come up with something and then bring to the greater group So then we're on the same page for what's going to happen in terms of the urban forest related to the project.
Yeah, I like the task force idea as far as doing some of the legwork on this and
Okay.
kind of acting as like a de facto committee.
I guess what I could do is send out a reminder email to the group, see who would be interested, and try to go from there. That sounds
I'd be good for
acceptable.
that, yeah.
Sounds good.
Rod
Okay.
has to be on it.
The other thing I just want to touch upon is city's been hearing a lot of concern about the condition of the sidewalk on the 100 block of East James. I don't know, if what's put in is appropriate or where we're at with that, but I just have heard some concerns. And so I've talked with the two representatives from DOT about this already and informed their supervisor about the issue. We'll talk about it again tomorrow at the James Street weekly meeting, and I also suggested to Bob and Megan, who are our two people in the field, that it would be good for DOT to come to a upcoming council meeting, potentially the July 6th meeting, for them to address this issue, talk about it, and just to highlight where they're at in terms of the project overall. We're not quite half, maybe getting close to halfway through. So it'd be appropriate, I think, for them to comment about that. And so at this point, in terms of that issue, that's where that's at.
Yeah.
We are asking questions and want to make sure that what's there is what's supposed to be there. Is it appropriate? Is it what we want to see over the long haul? So
Yeah, it just seems like geographically to start, that's just a gnarly section of our town where one half of the street sits considerably higher than the other half.
yeah, I
From
certainly
one side of the street to the other. I don't think that was any kind of low-hanging fruit for them to design and execute. But
sure.
Matt?
Springboarding off of your statement, Patrick, about grumblings, a couple things that came up. Rod and I ended up actually walking around before the meeting to verify. Some people think that there is no locations for trees out there. We did, in fact, find all of them. They have been poured, and then there was felting put around the slab, so it'll be easy for the city to pull them out later. So what may look like not a place for a tree is actually a place for trees. So to kind of put that concern to rest, there is locations in the 100 block for trees to be put in, if that is the final will of what we're going forward with. And secondly, I'd like to say that I personally invited a certain individual in our community to join us this evening to vocalize his concerns about the project in a manner that would be more suited for conversations and concerns. He did not make himself present here for any other meeting or any other way. So again, encouraging people out there, if you have concerns about the project, to reach out to Patrick, to reach out to staff in a way that is constructive, I guess, the best way to put it. Things can be addressed going forward, but without us being made aware of issues as council representatives, as alder people for our constituents, or you all as city staff, it's hard for us to try to do anything about it. So whether it is for this item or anything going forward, I highly encourage anybody and everybody within this community to reach out to staff appropriately and do it so in a manner that leads to positive outcomes for our community. So
Yeah, I think what you're hitting on is usually, personally speaking, when I have concerns, I start with questions. And that's a good place to start, is asking questions on why something might look the way it does. But we don't all operate in a similar fashion, so that is what it is. Rod?
To springboard on Matt's back here, or whatever that saying is, I think we have to remember that right now it's the worst it's going to look. There are no trees, there are no signs, there are no lights. It's just a stark pavement. There's the white curing powder or whatever they put it on the sidewalks that make the sidewalks look pretty bad. But this is the worst it's gonna look. It's like when you build a house and you see what it looks like when it's half done and you go, oh my gosh, that looks horrible. But when it's all built up and done, it looks normal again. So I think people are just getting a little anxious because it looks so stark and naked down there, but it's just the beginning.
Well, I think already with the amount of construction that's gone on, people forget what that sidewalk looked like 6 months ago. I'm not so sure it didn't slope the whole way to the street.
It did.
And not just 5 feet and then slope down. So, I mean, I think they tried to address that concern. But to your point, to have DOT to come and speak with their expertise and the fact that they were actually the boots on the ground, so to speak, would be beneficial to all of us.
I agree. Yep.
If they would be so kind, that'd be great. Andy?
Just one last comment that, you're right, it did slant. It was a direct slant from the building to the street. It wasn't as steep, but having that 5-foot flat sidewalk is a heck of a lot better for my personal use. And when we walk the dogs every night, well, not every night, but most nights, we do walk down there, and a flat sidewalk is nice. Thanks.
Yeah, and at some point you're going to have to compensate for that geography.
Yeah.
So,
we'll have to see what DOT says, but I mean, a lot of questions, and we need the experts to answer it, not assumptions and guesses from us.
Okay.
anything else? Questions, comments, concerns? All right, so at this point, we have 2 items left. They both require us to go into closed session. So at this point, I'll take a motion to go into closed session, and I do not believe will we return to the air tonight. So at this point, we will bid everybody good evening, and thank you for watching. And again, our next meeting will be Thursday, July 6th. Have a good night. Whoops, first we got to do the stay on air here. We need to convene the closed session per state statute 19.85, part 1 party deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other public business when other competitive or bargaining reasons require specifically an offer to purchase city land for apartment proposal. Take that motion.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Hendrickson,
Aye.
Kenny,
Aye.
Lot,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Rule,
Aye.
Drexler,
Yes.
unanimous.
Or aye.
Thank
Sorry.
you.